All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to talk about the secret language of your data. And I love this analogy. If your data is a living, breathing organism, then metadata, well, that's its DNA. It's the absolute core code that defines what it is, what it all means, and how it's supposed to work.
And that brings up a really important question, right? I mean, we're just swimming in data, rows and rows in databases, endless streams of information. But think about it. On its own, a number like, say, 42, or a word like complete, it's totally meaningless. So what gives it context? What makes it useful?
You guessed it. The answer is metadata. It's really the unsung hero of the entire information world. It's the blueprint that takes this, chaotic mess of facts and turns it into something structured, something we can actually understand and use.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute basics. We're going to build a solid foundation here so you can really get a handle on this crucial concept. So, let's really dig in. What exactly are we talking about when we say metadata? It can sound a little abstract, a little techie, but there's a really simple way to think about it.
Okay, the classic definition, and this goes way back to the 90s when people were first trying to get their arms around these enormous new databases, is just this: data about data. That's it. It's the essential info you need to make sense of the actual data you're working with.
But here's a definition that really gets to the bigger picture. It's not just a technical label. Metadata describes the who, what, where, when, why, and how of all your organization's information. I'm talking everything from high-level business rules all the way down to the physical systems that are actually storing the bits and bytes.
Now here's where things get really interesting. Not everyone looks at this data blueprint from the same angle. Depending on what your job is, what you care about can be completely different. So that raises a really important point, right? Do you think a business analyst sees metadata the same way a database administrator does? I think you know the answer. Absolutely not.
And that is the key distinction. On one side, you've got the business user. They need to know the meaning. For them, the question is, what does customer_status code 3 actually signify? That's business metadata. Then you've got the technical user. They couldn't care less what it means. They need to know the mechanics. How is that code stored? What's the data type? Where is the table located? That's technical metadata. And here's the kicker. You absolutely need both for the whole thing to work.
This whole idea of managing metadata didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It actually has a pretty fascinating history that really just tracks the evolution of computing itself. So, to really get where we are today, we kind of have to look back. Long before we had these massive, complex data warehouses, we still had to manage our programs and our files. So, how do we do it?
Well, the journey started pretty simply back in the 70s and 80s with things called data dictionaries. These were basically just lists of fields and what they meant for old mainframe programs. Then things got a little more sophisticated with case tools, which could actually model the structure of entire systems. By the 90s, data warehousing was booming, and this group called the Metadata Coalition tried to create a universal standard for everything. And that effort, well, it eventually evolved into what we have today with the Common Warehouse Meta Model, a really sophisticated standard for both the business and technical side of things. And all of that brings us to the ultimate payoff. All this theory, all this history, it all leads to a very, very practical and powerful application: the modern data warehouse.
So, here's the big question. What's the payoff? Why on earth would you go to all this trouble? Why is having a formal metadata strategy so absolutely essential when you're building something as massive and expensive as a data warehouse?
The answer is simple, because without it, you don't have a warehouse, you have a data swamp, a chaotic, unusable mess. A metadata repository provides the structural integrity, the map, and the instruction manual. It is the absolute bedrock of the entire project. Period.
Just think about what it actually does for you. It tells your analysts what data is even available and, crucially, what it means. It shows them what kinds of questions are even possible to ask in the first place. It provides the context for everything: the business processes, the people, the locations, and maybe most importantly, it documents the business rules that govern how all that data is supposed to behave. It's the rulebook.
Ultimately, it comes down to this: a giant database is completely useless if you can't navigate it. Metadata is that navigation system. It's what transforms this colossal library of data into an interactive, intelligent resource that you can actually use to find powerful insights.
So as we wrap up, here's the question I want to leave you with, something to think about in your own work. Is your metadata an actively managed, purposeful map that guides everyone to the right answers? Or is it just an afterthought,
leaving your teams to wander blindly through a maze of information. Because honestly, the difference between those two is everything.
Hey, if you found this explainer helpful, do me a favor and share it with your colleagues or anyone else who might be interested. And of course, be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the concepts that shape our data world. Thanks for tuning in.